Well, hello. My name is Warren Koos, and welcome to today's podcast or webcast, I should say, as part of our Rhapsody Live series and Together at Home. I am the high brass product specialist for Buffet Crampon USA, and I'm joined here with one of my good friends and colleagues. We've been working together for a good number of years, and I'm really happy to introduce him in just a second, and it's going to be really a great session. So thank you for tuning in. And as we get a lot of people kind of congregating in the beginning of these, I just wanted to go over a few announcements, really. So this is, again, a fairly new series that we've come out with to entertain a lot of the things going on in today's world of staying at home and being, isolated, but really to try and give you some ideas and some great content in the meantime, and to connect with you, our listeners, and our customers and stuff from Besson, from B&S, from Antiquatoire, all of our brass brands as well, and woodwind brands as well. So as you can tell, we've done a lot in the last couple of months, and today is no different. So today is going to be really about Pended, our big sounds on the small screen with Mark Pender. So hello everyone, meet Mark Pender, the legendary trumpet player. Yeah. Awesome. So Mark, how are you doing today? And let everyone know what you've been up to and how things have been going for you in the past couple months.
I'm doing well, thank you. Knock on wood, healthy. Everybody's healthy here. The last few months, well, it's been quite interesting now for everybody, hasn't it? Certainly unexpected, and basically what I've done is not remarkable. So I could leave it at that, or I could go on. What do you think?
No, I mean, if you want to leave it there, that's fine. I think we all understand that, a lot of things have changed in the past couple of months for all of us. So, but yeah, why don't you go into details?
I was on the verge of going out for pretty much a tour that was going to last up until, some series of tours that were going to last up until around the end of Thanksgiving with Kenny Wayne Shepherd. And in early, late February, we finished tracking horns. Myself and Joe Sublett, the masterful saxophone player, we ended up tracking horns on Kenny's new record. So we had a huge schedule lined up, and excited about getting to work with a band that I just started working with about a year ago. So I didn't even really see the first year in completion because, suddenly we're all self-isolating. So, once all that happened, it was a big shock. But what I have done, and I don't even know why, is I decided not to take any time off the horn. A lot of people thought, well, why don't you take some time off? Let your chops do whatever they're going to do. But I kept up my practice routine, not an incredible practice routine, but between an hour and 2 hours every day. And I haven't missed a day since I've been isolating here in California.
Excellent. Yeah. So interesting. I'm just going to delve into that. You can continue after, but what does your 2 hour routine look like for the people at home who are in the same position?
Yeah, I've been forever practicing on the Doc Reinhardt's pivot system, and so I do the lip slurs for a good. I do the core lip slurs for about a half an hour to start with, and then I do the others for another 15, 20 minutes, and then maybe I'll just play. I'll improvise over stuff, or I'll try to work on some passages, or honestly, most of the time I'm just kind of free forming with the horn and playing what's off the top of my head. and to see if the ideas are still there, and then to try to exercise my chops to make sure I don't lose my range. Uh, because that's something I've learned in the past. Practicing at home is not playing live. Almost no matter how hard you practice at home, it's never as intense as it is on a real gig.
Yeah, we for sure we can all kind of relate to that, being completely or feeling completely prepared at home and then walking into a situation where like, well, that's really different, right? And that feels so different than what it was at home. Um, I'm gonna switch gears unless you had something else to kind of continue with, but yeah, I just wanted to switch gears and talk about like the beginning of your career. I mean, for those of you who are tuning in and don't know, Mark Pender is, well, Mark, the Love Man Pender, as it's been deemed, and really going after that whole idea. Mark is a tremendous trumpet player. He's been on screen for the last, I want to say, 25 years worth of shows with Conan O'Brien and its many iterations throughout that time, being a Conan O'Brien show, and then also being picked up on TBS, Conan on TBS as it was. And yeah, and but even before that, you were playing live with shows and bands well before that even happened. But yeah, so coming from someone who's on live television every night, I mean, there's some real consistency that needs to go with that or go along with that. And kind of talking about what you just said, what do you do on a regular basis at home to help emulate what you do on a regular basis?
And that comes back to the Doc Reinhardt approach. Is that at the end of the core, whatever my type is, the initial exercises that he gave me when I saw him in Philadelphia back in the mid '70s, late '70s. By the end of those core exercises, it's a middle C to low C to G above, an octave above the staff, high G. So by the time you get up there, it requires some chop busting. So I try to get in some chop busting. I mean, something that frankly hurts a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because I'm realizing over time, if it doesn't hurt a little bit, maybe I'm doing it wrong.
Very, very nice. Cool. No, so that's some great stuff. So if you're at home and having some struggles with that, it's certainly something to take away. And if you haven't heard of that study or that thought process of practicing, for sure, it's something to look into. Thank you.
But I think there's a lot of versions of this Doc Reinhardt thing. I mean, basically, what are we talking about? Those exercises really focus on long tones, a nice even tone, slurring nice and slowly, slurring back up. It's not really that complicated. With him, there's a little bit of positioning, but for the most part, I think even if you didn't follow a pivot system, a lot of people got tremendous results by long tones and lip slurs. They aren't fancy, and TV can be a valuable tool while you're doing them. Because it frequently will frighten and scare. Both frightens and angers family and small pets. Mm-hmm. They don't seem to be quite as fond of this exercise as I am.
No, and that's very funny and something to think about, because it does bring it back down to basics for sure of long tones, lip slurs, and flexibility exercises that are important for any player. But thinking about it in terms of so it's very interesting for you to say some of those techniques are what gets you through this consistency that you're known for. I mean, that's exactly what doing it every night and playing hard every night is takes its toll. And so if that's what brings you back to home so that you can continue that process, that's awesome. Really great. Everyone knows that you're the guy from the Conan show, or the Conan on TBS, as it was just recently and still kind of going. What Tell us a little bit about how you got started, and because I know, and I think it's a really fascinating story. And you could start wherever you want to start, but really, how did you get into being who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, that's funny. I was like a product of these school band programs. In fifth grade, they marched, a small company in that had a bunch of horns. And they go, what do you guys want to play? And you could play trumpet, you could play trombone, baritone horn, French horn, clarinet, uh, flute, and there were some drums, but that wasn't really that big a deal. And at that time, they started most saxophone players on clarinet. Uh, so they had all these instruments there, and they had them laying out and asked us in a very non-sanitary type of way to try them all out. And somehow I got a tone out of the trumpet right away. And they started us all on cornets. So they had a rent to buy program. And my first horn was an Olds cornet, Olds Ambassador cornet. And that thing, what a well manufactured instrument. Held up really well. I took it with me into marching band. It was, quite an instrument. Um, and through that, I was always the guy. I love being in band at school. Sometimes I'd do really well. I'd be first chair. Other times I'd be second or third chair. By the time I got in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I started playing some guitar and stuff, and I was singing. I knew I wanted to be in music, but I didn't know how. And by the end of high school, though, I really started to settle more on the trumpet, but I wanted something else, and I really wasn't getting it. Our school at the time had no emphasis on improvisation, and really nobody knew much about it. And so growing up in Kansas City, I find that kind of odd. So, by the time I'm 17 or so, I'm just out of high school. I've been listening to a lot of jazz, trying to just play along with it without knowing, what's going on actually. Oh, and another fact is audition for jazz band every year, didn't get in until my senior year. So, those things happen. Uh, so I finally, I get to this age, some people recommended that I go down to this legendary jam session in Kansas City at this Mutual Musicians Foundation, which was the old Black Musicians Union, local 627. And it's really where all the jazz that we're familiar with from Kansas City came out of this building. Charlie Parker, Lester Young, Count Basie, Benny Moten. And at that time, when I went down to the jam session, there were a lot of older guys there that had either played with those folks or had been around or played with other people. And when I went into the jam session, it was one of those kind of moments where you feel like you hear the angels sing. Like, well, you know what? This is where you should be. If you really want to play, there's no reason you should come anywhere other than here. And so they had jam sessions that started at midnight after all the, between midnight and 1 a.m. after all the clubs closed at that time in Kansas City. Now they stay open later. And all the musicians would come down and just jam until they got tired of it and went home. And I saw some great trumpet players. There was a guy there, Orville Piggy Minor. So when you listen to those records with Jay McShann's big band, and there's some wild plunging work, it's Piggy. And he was such a good friend to me, such a mentor. And every weekend I'd show up there, and he'd, have me sit next to him, and I'd watch what he did. He didn't have any teeth by then, but he still managed to get a lot of sound out. And cut to a couple of years of doing that, and there was a guy there. His name was Professor Willie Rice. He was a piano player and a trumpet player and a writer, and he'd produced a lot of stuff in the 40s and 50s and 60s in the area. They were putting together a big band that was part of a CETA program, Jimmy Carter work program. And there were two bands in the country. One was in New York and the other was in Kansas City. So it was an 18-piece big band. And I was down at the jam session one night, and Willie says, "I want you to be my trumpet player. So go down and get certified unemployed and on Monday. And when you come back, we're going to put the band together." And I thought it sounded too good to be real, but I did it. And when I showed up, here I am amongst one of 18 guys. I was the youngest guy in the band. I was the only white guy in the band at the time. And we started rehearsing the next week, and we were on payroll through this work program. And it was such an incredible experience for me, because now suddenly I'm playing 5 days a week, 7 hours a day. I mean, maybe we didn't play the whole time. It was basically a 7-hour a day, 1 hour lunch program. Plus there was another band that I was in called Mass Transit that was like a funk band, and we were playing clubs and stuff. So I was doing all those at the same time, and it became my college. And after that, anytime. Kansas City is such a great place. It has this jam culture. And I expected every place I was going to go the rest of my life to be like that. And it's just not true. But so a typical thing we would do on a Friday, Saturday night is, if we didn't have a gig, is we'd go see other people play and then ask them if we could sit in. And so Charles Earlin, this jazz soul organist, comes to town. And actually, Lee Morgan's last recording before he was shot was for Charlie Earlin, the Mighty Burner, they called him. So he comes to town and tells me and my friend Steve Harvey, who's a great saxophone player, my partner at the time, well, when I come back next year, I want you guys to join the band. So that sounds like a whole bunch of BS, not B&S, but BS. And so I said, whatever, I continued doing my gigs, and he does come back to town a year later, and he goes, "Well, are you ready?" And we're just going to go to New York, and I have a record deal with Columbia Records. And I'm, okay. So I left to go on the road with him, and that's how I ended up in New York. And of course, he had a tour bus, which was a converted school bus that had most of the seats taken out of it. We were setting up the PA and his organ and all the equipment every night, and riding around sleeping on the bus. And then we were sharing the rooms, me, Steve Harvey, my buddy, and a great drummer, Chico Rouse. He was Charlie Rouse's son. So we would, all three of us, share a room. And it kind of sucked, man. We never made the money he said we were going to make. We get to New York. It's like January. It's cold as hell. And Charlie says, "Well, if you want to go back home, go back home. I don't have any work for a while." And I came to New York to do all this stuff. I mean, I'm not going back home. So I stayed, but my friend Steve ended up going back home. But I stayed and, ended up just hanging around and building relationships and stuff. But man, it was tough, man. First of all, as a lot of people know who go to New York, rent in New York is probably 4 times what it is in a place like Kansas City. So there was a shock and I had to do, I had to do some day jobs and stuff, and a lot of stuff to try to stay in there. Over time, though, I met the people that I developed these relationships with, and one of them was Mike Spangler, great trumpet player, uh, who got me on a few sessions that led to me being part of the horn section that did. We first did Diana Ross, then we went on to do Southside Johnny, and we went on to do Little Steven, then the Disciples of Soul, and then Bruce Springsteen. And and with those guys, and with the root of that, myself and La Bamba, and we it all ended up leading to the Conan show.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but with a lot of, it's a roller coaster ride trying to do this for a living.
Yeah.
And I'd have some really great years. I did a David Bowie record. I went out with Bruce Springsteen in the late '80s, and arenas, and there were a couple of times 1, 2, 300,000 people audience. It was just an incredible thing, and and finally, the Conan thing was such a gift. When we auditioned for it as a band, I was sure we wouldn't get it. And I was touring with Robert Cray at the time, the guitar player, singer. And I got a call that we got the gig while I was out on tour. And came back and started rehearsing. And, a few weeks later, we were doing shows on the air. And then that lasted for 25 years for us, and it ended for the house band in October of 2018.
Yeah. Wow. So get my numbers right, but it's 25 years.
25 years, yeah.
Yeah. So that what you thought would have been a what would have been a failed audition, so to speak, was a 25-year long on the air every night almost, and doing
yeah, 5 nights a week, eventually 4. But we also, when we started, they only promised us 13 weeks.
Yeah.
So they continued to extend us for 13 weeks only for really the first 3 or 4 years.
Oh man.
We were never promised more than 13 weeks. And eventually they said, well, yeah, okay, you guys are here. And the show's not being canceled or whatever. I mean, there was real fear of the show being canceled probably the first year. And after that, Conan's audience really showed up, and it became, what I think was an iconic show. I was glad to be part of it.
Yeah, no, and that's a huge thing. A few things I'll chime in with. There's a lot of people saying hello, so I just wanted to acknowledge some of them. Some from within the company, of course. Lori Orr from the New York showroom, who you've met when you were up there. Yeah, of course. Is just chiming in and saying hi. Our president and CEO Francois Clark is here and mentioning you, chiming in. Our woodwind product specialist says hello as well, and some others from within the company that you've probably seen at NAMM over the past couple of years as well. But no, I just wanted to mention a few things, especially for our listeners, who are maybe in some of the same positions now, going through some tough or hard times, even if they're not living in New York. For some of them, what were some of the things that got you through the hard times before you were able to really make those relationships? Do you have any advice for those?
Well, a lot of it has to do with this type of practice routine, that was one thing. Never stop practicing, because all of a sudden, I know when I first moved to New York, I lived in New Jersey first for 10 years. So, it'd be like hoping to get gigs. And if the phone rang and something decent came up, you have to be your very best for that gig. And so the practice became very important. And there were a few times I did some work, in like assembly line and Mercedes-Benz file department, couple gigs like that. but I still practiced every day to try to stay up for when the gigs came in. And fortunately, you know, I haven't had to do day jobs too many times, but there were a few times where I had to do it. And if you have to do it, you have to do it. I mean, I don't think there's any shame in that. And I think that's sometimes because I've seen a mindset among some of our brother and sister musicians, that they're above that, and it's okay to be a bohemian uh, and not work at all. But I have this theory that people read it in you about something about work ethic. That, you know, you have to be willing to put in whatever it takes to get something out of it. And I think now is a very unique situation. And I was asking my wife, you know, I'm not sure what I would have done had this happened. I moved to New York area and lived in New Jersey first in January of 1980. Had this happened, say for instance, this was 1980, what would I have done? I was 22 years old, uh, already starving pretty much. Uh, what would I have done? Would I have had the fortitude to stick with it and say, well, whatever it takes, even during this pandemic, I'm going to just get through it and not leave? You know, it's a question that's impossible to answer, but it does make me think, and that's where I have a lot of empathy for young players now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people, and myself included, you know, we were like kind of out there getting it, you know, playing gigs, having a great time. Um, you know, the future looked very bright, and right now the future, I won't say it's not bright, but it's unsettled.
Yeah.
We don't know when we're going to be able to play out in theaters and concerts and even in clubs, and you know, and even recording sessions for a horn player can be a little bit dicey. You know, you're breathing in air. You know, you're in the room with everybody else, and you're breathing in. I mean, you're breathing in deeper than most people would ever breathe in talking or anything else.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of young guys now could probably teach me lessons as to how, you know, what does it take to get through this, and how to persevere. You know,
I think something you said is actually pretty powerful though, and can stick and is pretty relevant today as well. But it's really just sticking to do whatever you need to do, right, to get through whatever it is we need to get through, and until that's uncertain, the uncertainty kind of clears up throughout the next few months, or however long this will end up panning out. But really, still continuing to push your effort through practicing and being prepared. I think of what you said to really uh, match with what I think of as, you know, preparation meeting opportunity, you know, and that's exactly what you outlined as an idea where you're like, you should be prepared at any point to just drop what you're doing and go and play your best, and be noticed and have developed those relationships at that moment, that will continue. And I think that's exactly the message. Yeah.
and you know, my playbook when I was first in New York, and all the years that I was there, and now that I'm in Los Angeles too, is always have a lot of threads out. You know, a lot of different people I've played with, part of a lot of different scenes, uh, and that's always served me really well.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just having a good face on, enjoying myself when I play. Uh, you know, I mean, I really love hanging out with other musicians and playing gigs. You know, I mean, there could be nothing more thrilling than playing through a book, or that I've never played before, or playing with a band that I play with all the time, and you know, seeing all these faces out there smiling back at you. I mean, wow, you know, I mean, what a gift. I mean, what an incredible experience, you know. And I think that sometimes it's good. It's okay to wear your enthusiasm and your love for what you do.
That's great. Yeah. I wanted to get to a few questions that maybe
You know,
that
I'm
maybe
not seeing them. Maybe I did something wrong. I don't see the questions.
no. So they're all on Facebook. We're all through Facebook. So I'm looking at some that came through from some of our own colleagues, of course. So Matt Vance actually asked you about how you developed or got coined, how the nickname Love Man got coined, and I think that's a really cool story that I'll let you tell if you're willing.
Yeah. So I guess I was in my early 20s and I joined this band, Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul. So that's Miami Steve Van Zant's, was his solo project. We did the record. And Steven, of course, is Silvio on the Sopranos, also the guitar player from the E Street Band. Incredible producer, incredible band that he had. And we were lucky enough to be part of that first band and that first record. So we were playing big man's in Red Bank, New Jersey. That was Clarence Clemens Club. It's a very large rock club. So we were playing there, and we were staying in a hotel down there. And I was listening to Marvin Gaye in my room, and I was singing along with Marvin. And Stephen was at my door knocking on it, and I didn't hear it. But he heard me singing along with Marvin. And so Steve liked to give everybody in the band, and that's part of that, the Jersey scene is a lot of guys have nicknames. You know, there was La Bamba, there was Eddie Kingfish Mannion, you know, that all the guys, you know, a lot of the guys ended up having Southside Johnny, you know, have nicknames. So that night he calls me the Love Man because he heard me singing this love song and I wasn't answering the door. And after that, he, you know, it started being added as credits on records. And I was being introduced that. And then people were coming up to me and saying, "Hey, Love Man," they didn't know that, you know, it was just, I didn't think it was a name that was going to stick around, and it has. And now it's too late to do anything about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's very fitting, and even now today. I mean, if you haven't checked out Mark's albums and stuff on well wherever, I see them on YouTube a lot, but I own several of them, but they're really great. And you sing on all of your albums, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
and you can probably still get them through my website. I have not
Yeah.
touched the website in a few years, but that doesn't mean that the commerce part of it is closed. But it does look like the last gig that I did was probably like 6 years ago. So it might be time to update it. Oh, look, another pandemic project.
There you go. Practice and update websites.
Update website.
Very, very cool. We have one more question from our in-house producer, actually. Declan Lynch asks, since you're a native of the Kansas City area,
Go
what,
Chiefs!
of course,
Woo!
yeah. And his question has to do with the local cuisine and what is your favorite barbecue in Kansas City or otherwise, I guess. But
you know, it's really evolved over time because everybody says it's like Joe's, formerly Oklahoma Joe's, which I think is pretty good. I mean, I'm still really hooked on Gates and Sons. Back in the 70s, you know, you really didn't get better barbecue than you got at Gates. It used to be called just a smokestack. Now it's Jack Fiorella's smokestack. And the other one, Arthur Bryant's.
which of those would like bring you back home and be like, oh, this
Well,
this
it's a tie.
Oh yeah.
Between Gates and Smokestack. So my family, we were out in South Kansas City, Grandview area. And so whenever I'd come home, you know, so where do you want to go for dinner? Smokestack was not far. And it was a sit-down restaurant where Gates is more cafeteria style. a sit-down restaurant with really nice service, a really nice setting, all wood paneling with, some statues of pigs and cows and stuff, and beautifully painted portraits of beef before it becomes brisket. And the smell in there when you're about a mile and a half away and the car windows down, you can smell the meat smoking. It's pretty. It's pretty good.
Yeah. No, I'm hungry already, so that's fantastic. No, I have a few more questions, really. And if anyone is listening and watching, and well, thank you for joining us today. You've been listening to Mark Pender, the Love Man. I explain a lot of the history of how he became the sensation he is and what he's been doing over the last 25 plus years, as well as recently. But also, if you have any questions for him or me, about B&S trumpets or anything we've talked about so far, please feel free to join in the comments. We'll certainly entertain any of those questions here live as we are here. And after everything's done today, continue to ask questions, and we'll try and get back to you as we can. Mark, I have one last question from my side, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. But you mentioned the Olds Ambassador that you started on, and really taking a liking to trumpet for that, and they were really great instruments. How did you make the switch? When did you become have a better relationship with B&S instruments, and how did that evolve?
Well, you hit that. What do you guys call it? You have a term for it when your student horn, it's time to move on.
Plateauing, maybe?
I don't know. When you're ready to move on to a professional horn,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think it was like 7th or 8th grade, 8th grade. Like, you know what, this Olds Ambassador cornet is great, but it's not a trumpet. You need a real instrument. So at that time, my band director, Mr. Epstein, in the Grandview schools, he worked over by a music store in Kansas City, and he says, "Well, meet me over here on Saturday." So I met him over there, and I tried 2 different horns that they had. One was the Olds Ambassador, which was a fantastic horn. The other was the Bach Stradivarius. So I bored everybody with my terrible playing for, an hour and a half, 2 hours, playing these 2 horns on and off. And I chose the Bach Strad in the end. Horn served me very well. Apparently you need to clean them occasionally.
It helps.
So, I stayed on the Bachs, and then I moved to New York. I lived in Paterson, New Jersey for a while, and I went to a friend's house to do some jamming and stuff, and I decided I was going to walk home, and on the way home I got mugged, and they took my Bach, and so I didn't have a horn. I borrowed a horn from this great guitar player, Mark Rebo, and I worked a day job until I had enough money, and I bought another Bach, which at that time cost $500. I bought another Bach 37 bell, gold brass bell, and played that horn, still have it. And so then I got another Bach eventually, just shortly after we started the Conan show. And, the new ones weren't quite what even that one in, like, I think it was 1980, 81 that I had the horn stolen from me. It was by 93 when we started the Conan show and I was looking for a new horn. I felt like I settled. I found a Bach, I liked it, and it's a good horn. It's still a very good horn. Mm-hmm. And then I'm at the show, and what's his name, Gardella, the mouthpiece guy. Steve? Wait. Yeah, I can't remember his first name now. But he was there bringing Jerry Gavino, our sax player, some of his mouthpieces. and made very good product. And they were being manufactured at the same factory in Berlin. No, actually, Mark Newkirchen,
Yep.
as the B&S trumpets. So he just so happened to have a B&S trumpet with him, and he goes, "Look, these guys asked me if you'd try the horn." And my first response was like, "No, I don't want to do it." Because you try a million different horns. I didn't love a lot of horns that were out at that time. I tried a bunch of Yamahas. I didn't love them. There are a lot of other horns on the market. Now there's more than ever, and a lot of really good products, by the way.
Yeah.
But he said, "Well, look, just play on it so I can tell these guys that you play it on it." So I'm in there, I play a couple of notes, and oh, well, this is actually a pretty decent horn. So do you mind if I take it into our rehearsal? So I take it into rehearsal, and I'm really digging it. So Dave's still there. Dave Gardella, that's his name. He's still there. And I said, "Do you mind if I play it on the show tonight?" So I played it on the show that night. And I had my Bach underneath the stand, because sometimes, it's one thing you play to rehearsal, everything, the gigs gets fired up, everybody's crazy, there's all the noise and everything, and you're like, that horn's not that great. But this horn was actually great. I mean, it was better than the Bach. Eventually the Bach goes in its case. I'm playing that horn. I still have it. And since then, I've been playing the Challenger series, and of course that one that you have there.
Yeah. So the Challenger one. So you started, the first one you played, was that the Challenger one, or was that something else?
I think that might have been I think that was a Challenger 2.
Yeah. So that was the elaboration.
That was the elaboration.
Yeah. And then you slowly moved to a Challenger 1 in gold lacquer. Is that right?
That was a gold gold lacquer.
Yeah. And so what made you change from what you were on as far as the elaboration to the gold lacquer Challenger 1?
Well, Gerhard Meinl, comes to town, and it's always a great hang with Gerhard.
Yeah.
Just a wonderful guy. Love that guy. Always made me feel really welcome, and so he says, "It's about time you get a new horn." And I was not thinking that, actually. So I meet him at Sam Ash in Midtown at the time, and we start looking at horns. He goes, "Well, what do you like about, I go, no, I don't like any of them better than the one I'm playing." "Well, what do you like about this one? What do you like about that one? What do you like about this one?" So I told him all the things I liked about it, and he put it together in one horn. And that was that gold lacquer horn. And I loved the way it looked, and the way it played, obviously. I mean, I really, at that time, I'd never played a better trumpet in my life. Mm-hmm. And then I got another one eventually, but so I went to hang out with you guys.
Yeah, we had you over for what was it, the Jacksonville Jazz Festival? Was that 2014, 2015?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So.
And so you said, "Well, play on all these horns. Tell us what you think." You had like 25 horns laid out. And my mantra on the way out there is, you don't need another trumpet. Don't get another trumpet. You don't need one. You're not coming home with another trumpet. It's just be stupid to get another trumpet. You love the ones you have. You don't need one. Then I played this one. And I said I'd never play silver because they were too much work. It's no work at all.
Yeah.
The horn plays great. I mean, I just felt like my B&S experience just kept getting better over time. And to find that silver horn was, what a gift. Again, it might help if I cleaned it.
No.
Whoops. Light went out. Hold on.
No, so while he's fixing his light, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. There's some questions to get to, so please don't feel neglected. We're gonna answer some more barbecue questions, it seems. Yeah, so another question about barbecue came up and asked, since you don't live in Kansas City, although you do make visits and go home every once in a while to see family and friends and so on and so forth. But so living in LA and also with your wife being in New York and splitting your time between those two cities of late, do you find barbecue outside of Kansas City of equal quality or something?
There's no way they could be of equal quality. I mean, come on. There were a couple places out here that I think are decent. Of course, they're quite a bit more expensive than you would see anywhere else. Two places on Ventura Boulevard, not far from me. Ashes and something in Ashes, really, really decent barbecue.
Right.
And then there's Bone, I don't know, something like that. Then I heard Bloodsoes is really good. I've never tried them, but I should. But since I have outdoor space here that I did not have in New York City, I'll smoke my own ribs.
Nice.
So I have two systems set up here. I have the Weber gas grill, and then I have a fairly large kettle grill. And what I do is this is very closely related to playing the trumpet. So I set up the coals on one side and some wood, and also soak some hickory wood chips in water for a couple hours, and then put it on there and put the ribs on a vertical rib rack on the other side and let it smoke. But it's a quick smoke. It's not like hours and hours. A couple hours beginning to finish, and that turns out great.
That I'm salivating now. It's about time for ribs right now. Yeah.
But it takes work, though. I mean,
Yeah.
it's you have to be dedicated to the.
So you've heard it here. Mark Pender smokes his own ribs in LA. So there we go.
Right. Otherwise, I might grill some stuff on the, when I want it fast, just grill some stuff, But that's not really barbecue. That's just grilled food.
Right. Yeah. The last few questions, and I will see if there's anything else to really kind of talk about. But right now, actually, Mark, there is. I know the answer to this, but you're gonna answer it much better than I. Mark, Triple C, and this is from Christoph Gomes.
Well, you know what? You paused for a second there. There was a glitch. What was the question again?
Oh, sorry. Mark, you play Triple C? Question mark.
Wow. Yeah, I wish. I always wish I could get up to the Triple C. Occasionally, I can. I always felt like I've had B flat and a pretty decent, and sometimes, I mean, screaming, triple forte B, but my Triple C 70s in some of those big bands, But I've, at the end of that Conan theme, I had that nice A, and
Oh, yeah. I think the answer for everyone is that it's all in long tones. Continue our long tone studies, yeah. So again, the stronger you can be in the staff, the better you can be all around the horn, of course. So yeah.
Absolutely, and it takes some real concentrated work to increase your range. Exercises and utilization.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what he's asking. If he's asking for you to play a Triple C, or have you played a Triple C, or how he can play a Triple C, but we will continue to pine on that answer for many trumpet players from now until the end of time. So. Nice. Mark, I wanted to thank you so much for everything. If there's anything to kind of help plug, I know we posted your website and stuff for everyone to find who you are, not who you are, but where to find you and where to connect with you and buy CDs if they really wanted to check out some of that great stuff. Check that out.
I have the Instagram thing, at Loveman Pender, LUVMAN Pender.
Absolutely.
You can always reach out to me there. That's probably more reliable than my website these days. I usually get back to people right away.
Yeah, there you go. So find Mark on Instagram and connect with him there. If you have any questions for me as a product specialist for B&S and Buffet Crumpine, you can certainly address them in the comments. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And also for Mark, I'll act as a liaison between them. But you can also find him on Instagram through his website and any other avenues you can find. So again, Mark, this has been really great. I have a few closing announcements and stuff, but thank you so much for everyone to join us today. You've been listening to our B&S webcast with Mark Pender, talking about everything about Mark's past and how he got into being on the small screen and even in between and afterwards. And we talked about barbecue at some point in the last 7 minutes, so it's really great. So thank you so much for that. Next week, you'll actually find some really cool content. It'll be right here on our New York showroom Facebook page through Buffet Crumpon, and we will be talking about the jazz trombone with our wonderful Courtois artist, Delfeo Marsalis, and he'll be hosted by our low brass product specialist, Declan Lynch. So please feel free, but please do attend that. There's going to be some really great stuff next week. And that will be right here on this page, our New York showroom page at 2 o'clock on next Thursday, and that's Eastern time. So whatever that means for you, if you're in California, that'll be 11 a.m. your time next Thursday. Thank you so much to Mark and everyone who's watching, and we will see you next week.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.